The sunrise over the Chang International Circuit in Buriram usually brings heat, but in February 2026 it brought a sound that shouldn't exist. For 24 years, Yamaha was the symphony of the Inline-Four, smooth, elegant, and precise. But as the garage doors of the Monster Energy and Pramac teams slid open, the air was shattered by a brutal, guttural roar. Yamaha's Project Blue Shift was no longer a secret. The V4 era had arrived. But behind the scenes, this wasn't just a technical upgrade. It was a desperate gamble. After a 2025 season that saw the once mighty Japanese factory languishing at the back of the grid, the board in Iwata made a choice that horrified traditionalists. They killed the Inline-Four. They had spent months running 3 parallel development platforms, a move of such immense cost and logistical chaos that many insiders believed it would bankrupt their racing spirit before it ever won a race. The tension in the garage was thick enough to touch. On one side, the veteran Fabio Quartararo, his face a mask of frustration after a disastrous Sepang test where the new engine was 15 kilometers per hour slower than the Ducati. On the other, the newcomer, the man they call Toprak Razgatlıoğlu. Yet, as the first session began, the paddock realized this wasn't just a new engine. It was a new philosophy that threatened to break their star riders before it ever fixed the bike. But behind that calm Turkish expression, the pressure on Toprak was building fast. Moving from the production-based World Superbike paddock to the prototype purgatory of MotoGP is a transition that has destroyed the careers of legends. Toprak wasn't just fighting the clock, he was fighting physics. At 185 centimeters tall, he is a giant in a sport designed for jockeys. In the wind tunnel, his height was a nightmare for Yamaha's aero engineers. To get him low enough to slice through the air, they had to redesign the entire seat unit. But there was a catch. Regulations regarding the aero box meant that if Toprak used a lower seat, the rear tail fins, the very wings that give the bike stability at 340 kilometers per hour, became illegal. Inside the garage, whispers began spreading. He's too tall for the M1, some mechanics muttered. He'll have to choose ergonomics or aerodynamics. If he chose comfort, he would be a sitting duck on the straights. If he chose the aero, his knees would be hitting his elbows, making it impossible to manhandle the beastly V4. The data from the morning session was clear. Toprak was fighting the bike and the bike was winning. But what the telemetry discovered next would shock even the most senior Japanese engineers. Inside the technical office, the mood shifted from panic to obsession. The Buriram circuit is a torture chamber for engines. The abrasive asphalt and 40-degree heat usually cause power degradation that leaves Yamaha's electronics in a tailspin. But this time, something was different. The technical focus had shifted from experimental to optimization. The breakthrough came in the torque character. In previous phases, the V4 was a wild animal. It would overrev on the exit of slow corners, forcing the riders to fight the throttle just to keep the front wheel on the ground. But the latest engine map specification introduced a progressive torque curve. Engineers hadn't just added power, they had sculpted it. Telemetry showed a staggering decrease in traction control intervention. The bike wasn't just faster, it was cleaner. For the first time, the mechanical grip was doing the work, not the computer chips. Toprak began a series of long runs, not chasing a single glory lap, but testing the bike's soul over distance. The cooling system, a major focus for 2026, was finally breathing. Even in the sweltering Thai afternoon, the performance didn't drop. And from that moment, nothing would ever be the same for the Yamaha project. Yet, the real turning point happened away from the cameras, in a heated exchange behind the hospitality tents. While Toprak was finding a rhythm, the other side of the garage was a different world. Fabio Quartararo's public lack of confidence had become a paddock wildfire. Rumors suggested he was already in talks with HRC for 2027. He had suffered a broken finger in Sepang, a setback that some insiders claimed was as much mental as it was physical. The V4 is slow, Quartararo had told the media just weeks prior. I don't see the light. The political tension was reaching a boiling point. Yamaha had invested millions into Toprak's arrival, placing him in the Pramac satellite team but with full factory support. It was a clear message. If the champion won't lead, the rookie will. Some mechanics claimed something felt off in the way data was being shared or not shared between the two camps. The Blue Shift plan was supposed to unify Yamaha, but it was creating two separate islands. Toprak was providing detailed feedback on rear chatter and suspension transitions, while Fabio's side of the garage remained eerily quiet. Yet this was only the beginning of a far bigger storm. Because as Toprak lined up for a race simulation, the rivals began to notice something terrifying about his sector times. If you watch Toprak Razgatlıoğlu, you see a man who refuses to accept the laws of motion. He is the king of late braking, a rider who keeps the bike vertical while everyone else is already leaning. In MotoGP, that style is usually a recipe for a high-side disaster. But the 2026 M1 V4 had a secret weapon, an adjusted engine brake mapping designed specifically for Toprak's aggressive entry. The results were explosive. In Sector 2, a technical nightmare that demands precision braking, Toprak was purple, then again in Sector 3. The bike was no longer exhibiting the lateral movement or rear chatter that had plagued Yamaha for a decade. It was stable. It was calm. The rival teams, Ducati, KTM, Aprilia, began to scramble. Their scouts were spotted in the bushes at Turn 3, recording the exhaust notes of the Yamaha. They weren't just hearing a V4, they were hearing a firing order that sounded dangerously similar to the dominant Desmos Disa. However, the twist that followed would change the championship narrative entirely. It wasn't the speed that caught them off guard, it was what happened when the tires should have been dead. As the afternoon sun began to dip, Toprak didn't pull into the pits. He stayed out, 10 laps, 15 laps, 20 laps. In MotoGP, the final phase of a race is where Yamaha usually collapses, the tires overheat, the engine bogs down, and the riders are swallowed by the European V4s. But the Buriram 2026 data showed something that felt like a miracle. Toprak's lap times were flat, no drop-off, no performance degradation. The Paddock's reaction was significant. "They've solved the cooling," whispered one rival crew chief. "If they can keep those tires alive in this heat, they are a threat at every flyaway race on the calendar." But behind the scenes, rumors suggested deeper tension. Some believed Yamaha was cheating the weight distribution by using a prototype fuel tank that shouldn't be ready until the mid-season. Others claimed the minor aero package was actually a sophisticated active ride height system hidden within the swing arm. The speculation was reaching a fever pitch. Yamaha was no longer the underdog. They were the interrogated. What happened after that left even his closest team members stunned. Toprak returned to the box, removed his helmet, and said 4 words that silenced the garage. "The bike is mine." For the first time since he stepped into the MotoGP paddock, Toprak wasn't trying to ride the M1. He was owning it. The integration between the mechanical V4 and the electronic brain of the bike had reached a state of synchronization that usually takes years to achieve. He was no longer providing feedback, he was providing directions. He wanted the front end firmer. He wanted the winglets adjusted by 2 mm for high-speed stability. The 2026 pre-season test at Buriram will be remembered as the moment experimentation transformed into real potential. It wasn't just a good test, it was a declaration of war. The rivals saw it in the sector times. The fans saw it in the stoppies Toprak performed as he entered the pit lane. The era of the soft Yamaha was over. The V4 had given them a spine of steel. Yamaha had survived the transition, but the real war was only just beginning. Because while the bike was ready, the human cost of this project was about to surface. As the teams packed their crates for the opening round, the atmosphere in the Yamaha camp was a mixture of exhaustion and electric excitement. They had done the impossible. They had built a V4 from scratch and made it competitive in less than 18 months. But the Blue Revolution had left scars. The divide between Quartararo and the new direction of the team was a setback that couldn't be ignored. The paddock was now divided. Was this Toprak's team now? The 2026 season is no longer a learning year. It is a warning year. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu didn't just come to MotoGP to participate. He came to dismantle the hierarchy. With a bike that now mirrors his aggression and an engine that finally has the maximum thrust to match the Italians, the Ottoman king has found his throne. The data is recorded, the rumors are flying, the engines are cooling, but the message sent from Buriram is echoing across the world of motorsports.